Greetings to all. As a part of the project of the Department of Justice, Ministry of Law under the Government of India, this legal awareness dissemination video is recorded, which is coordinated by CEERA-NLSIU Bangalore. In this video, I'll be discussing about the rights of consumers under the Electricity Act. We are well aware that power sector is very critical one for guaranteeing the quality life for individual, as well as instrumental for economic growth of the country. And on a deeper understanding, we find that the sector needs to address the interest of the consumer, not only for providing better services to the end user, but also for its own survival. Because it's the consumer who are strengthening the sector by ensuring timely payment of the services which has been used by them. So I will be touching upon the issues of rights of consumers. The main focus would be that. But along with that, I'll also briefly touch upon the constitutional scheme, then what is the underpinning of the consumer rights under the Electricity Act, what provisions are there in the Act which connects with the rights, and then I'll also focus on the significance of advocacy for making these rights implementable and realizable. Before I start discussing the rights of consumer under the Electricity Act, at the very outset, I would like to clarify that consumers do have a right to claim redressal under the Consumer Protection Act also. Because Section 2, subsection 49 of the Consumer Protection Act defines deficiency of service, and in that definition, you have supply of electrical energy as a service. So that forum is also available to seek redressal, to seek relief for any wrongdoing. However, this present video is not going to discuss the functioning of the consumer forum and how the matter can be brought in before that forum. This video relates only to the Electricity Act and what are the forums there given under the Act which a consumer can invoke. Now, who is consumer? Generally, for the purposes of Electricity Act, consumers are classified into various categories based on type and nature of consumption, such as residential consumer, commercial consumer, agricultural consumer, industrial consumer. This categorization is important for various purposes. It is important for determination of tariff. It is important for laying down the performance parameters. It is important for laying down the obligation of the licenses. So consumer under the Electricity Act is to be understood in a sense that under which category an individual or an entity falls, because entity is also a consumer. So accordingly, we need to understand and develop an understanding that which provision shall be applicable to which set of consumer. For example, individuals as a residential consumer, they pay tariff which is generally lesser than the tariff which has been fixed for commercial industrial consumers. Just to give this information and to make this very clear, that electricity as a subject features in the concurrent list, and therefore it becomes a responsibility of both the center and the states to do the needful for ensuring the implementation of the Electricity Act. And that's why you find that with the central law, that is Electricity Act 2003, you have also rules notification notified by the state governments which regulate this sector. So electricity as a subject has got a, it has been placed in such a, it's placed in a concurrent list, and therefore center makes a law in order to ensure uniformity in this sector, in order to ensure security of the, to the players of the sector. At the same time, states do have a responsibility to see that necessary rules and regulations are being framed to address the local requirements, local concerns, regional issues. Now, coming to the issue of consumer and consumer rights, the preamble of the Electricity Act focuses on protection of the interest of consumers. This is what exactly the wordings which are there in the preamble when you read the preamble of the Act. And as we read and understand the significance of the preamble of any statute, it is a statement to understand the spirit behind enactment of the law. That what is the larger objective which the law attempts to achieve? What is the goal which is there to attain? So, preamble of the Electricity Act categorically highlights, in addition to competitiveness, in addition to open access, the protection of the interest of consumers also. So this very well signifies that how the Act gives importance to consumers in regulating the sector. And as I said, that consumer interest is paramount for the success of the power sector, because it is the capacity to pay and the very reliable supply of electricity to the consumer, significant for growth of the industry, power industry. So consumer interest is to be looked into in a way that no wrongdoing should happen to the consumer. Sailors and traders should not get into any kind of malpractices which would be harmful to the interest of the consumer. So how do we see that consumers' interests get fulfilled? It is all about accessibility of electricity, availability, and affordability too. Because this is important for fulfilling the requirement of from the consumer's perspective. For the same, what you find that in order to give effect to the preambular dicta, I would put it, there is a provision in the Act which suggests that how the grievance redressal mechanism to be framed, to be structured. Section 42, subsection 5 and subsection 6 suggest for that multi-tier structure. At the first level, you find that if consumer is unsatisfied with the service, it can lodge a complaint with the distribution company. Then, if the distribution company fails to resolve the issue, consumer can very well go to the consumer redressal forum, which is again the forum at the DISCOM level. Generally, in this forum, you would find there are 3 or 4 members, and it suggested that let there be kind of one independent member also. So first 2 levels of addressing the grievances of the consumer is well within the DISCOMs, the utility which supplies electricity to our residences, the utility which supplies electricity to the industry. First 2 levels are internal forums, you may say so, for addressing the issues of consumers' complaint. Then 3rd level is where the State Electricity Regulatory Commission, which is a statutory body constituted by the state government, they appoint ombudsman. And then if the consumer is not satisfied with the redressal, with the resolution done by the grievance redressal forum, then can approach ombudsman. And as I said, ombudsman is not an internal arrangement of the utility. It is not part of the DISCOM. And then if the consumer is still not satisfied, consumer can go to the tribunal. Appellate tribunal to deal with electricity matter has been especially constituted, or it can go to the court of law also. As I said, that consumer forum is also one forum available to take up the complaint from the consumer. So this is the multi-tier leveling structure which is available to look into the grievances of the consumer. Apart from that, we also find that there is a provision in the Act 57 which empowers the State Regulatory Commission to frame standards of performance regulation, which in a way delineates, which in a way details out that what is that standard parameter which the power sector needs to follow, and which is a matter of right for the consumer. So that standard of performance becomes a very important document to inform to the consumer that what all are obligation of the discoms, and if the discom fails to fulfill the obligation, then the consumer can very well take the discom to the tribunal if other forums fail to provide the redressal. Now, let me tell you some salient aspects of the standard of performance regulation. And as I said that this is something which the electricity as a subject is also a responsibility of the states. So it is something where you find that the performance this standard varies from one state to another state. And therefore, if you look for it, you'd find that every states do have their own code, regulations, charter. So what this standard provides for? It provides for standards of voltage fluctuation limits. It provides for timelines within which complaints to be resolved by discoms. If the timeline is not being followed for resolving the complaints, there is a provision of compensation which we as a consumer we are not aware. If there is power outage for more than stipulated duration, we are entitled to get compensation, which many of us are not aware of. So this all details will be available when you look at that standards of performance. The maximum time for restoring power supply, and as I said that consumers categories differ, and therefore the standard of performance also differs. Timelines may vary depending upon whether it's an industrial consumer, residential consumer, whether it's an urban one or rural one. So it varies. It also provides for a timeline within which discoms are required to replace the faulty meters or issues related to billings. Timelines are there within which new connections have to be provided to the consumers. For example, some states like Delhi, they provide that it should be provided within a week time. And then you have some other states where it says it will take 2 weeks, 3 weeks time. So timelines are given. And then we also find that the government has come up with the rules in pursuant to section 176(2)(z). And that rules broadly regulates the rights of consumer and attempts to give uniformity to the rights across the country, because it is made by the central government. And as a consumer, what we expect that the supply of electricity should be reliable and it should be a quality supply. There shouldn't be fluctuation. There shouldn't be longer power outages. And at the same time, distribution licensee cannot deny to supply electricity. So on request, it has to supply unless and until there are other related issues. For example, pending dues are there which are not cleared by the consumers. So this rules defines that what is the obligation of the discoms. For example, it says that if I approach the discom for getting a connection, I can apply it through hard copy or online, or if the distribution licensee maintains any mobile app. And then there should be a tracking system where once I apply, I can get the update on my application. Then every application shall be given a unique number so that it is easier to identify and to flag the issues if any. Then it also provides that there shall be a meter, which shall be a kind of prepayment meter, smart prepayment meter or prepayment meter. If the meter is installed outside the premises of the consumer, then the responsibility of securing the same is of the discoms. If it is within the premises, then the responsibility is of the consumer. And then the rules also says that the electricity bill should be communicated to the consumer through SMS or email or by both, as well as it should be uploaded on the website on the day of generation itself. Then there should be an option of paying the bill online or offline. And then it suggests that if the bill is more than 1,000 rupees, then must be paid an online. So this is where it's all about ensuring a kind of timely payment and also incentivizing the consumer that if you clear the bill on time, you may get certain benefits. It's all because of giving a quality service to the consumer and in return expecting timely payment of the bill from the consumer. So there is a responsibility of the licensees to supply electricity 24/7 to all the consumers. As I said, again, depending upon the categories of consumer, there can be lower hours of supply for some categories. And then rules also says that let there be a call center, customer service center to look into the issues of the consumer. Rule says that the consumer redressal forum must be established at different levels because these forums are very important institution for addressing the complaint. So it is suggested that distribution licensee, just for the sake of complying with the law, should not establish just one forum for the entire state. Otherwise, the whole mechanism would become unworkable. So this forum must be constituted at different levels: subdivision level, division level, circle level, district level, talukas, so that it becomes an effective forum. And then, as I said, that generally the forum says that it should be a 4-member. So one should be now it has been said that under the rule that there should be 4 consumer and prosumer representatives. What is prosumer? I'll explain a little later. And a timeline has also been given that this forum should address the issue within 45 days. And for senior citizens, for vulnerable groups, rule says that there should be forthcoming approach on the part of the distribution licensee for addressing their issues. So they should approach them. They should go to the residences of senior citizen in order to get the bill, paid for addressing their concern. In case of any power outages, consumers should be informed by SMS or any other electronic means. So look at it, the way the rules are framed, it is making the discoms more accountable, and the rules are empowering citizens, empowering consumers. That's what is the significance of this rule. Additionally, the rule also acknowledges a new role of the consumer. Now, with renewable playing a very significant role in energy security, consumer is also in a new avatar, where consumer is also into generation of electricity. So new rule also acknowledges that consumer can consume electricity from the grid, and consumer can also inject electricity into the grid, and accordingly billing has to be done, where two modalities were being suggested: one, net metering; the other, gross metering. I mean, again, that is the state governments, SERCs, they come up with the regulations on net metering and gross metering, where it all depends on that what is your consumption and what you're injecting, and accordingly billing is done. Or you consume, you inject, and then what you inject in the grid, you get a feed-in tariff for that same, and that ultimately, get adjusted. So this is again a provision which makes us more empowered and also a participant in ensuring that the sector thrives and becomes accountable as well. Now, the last part of my talk, I'll say that, see, law has a role to play, where law defines a boundary, where it regulates the sector. But then in order to make it a workable one, in order to make it a realizable one, implementable one, we as a consumer, we do have a role to play. And therefore, we need to make ourselves aware about what are our rights and what are the obligations of the licensees. And therefore, I believe this video is also an appropriate example of advocacy. One other, important aspect of advocacy is that which is a part of the act, where it says that there is a need for consulting the consumers before making rules and regulations, which we generally know as stakeholder meetings. So it is important that we as a consumer, we participate in such a stakeholders meeting. We try to understand the concern of the industry. We try to flag the issues of the consumer. And then we also need to see that the entitlements of the consumer is explained in local language, vernacular language. It is in simple language so that it can be understood by each and every consumer. Some initiatives are already been taken. As I said, you would find in some states there are consumer charter, which simplifies the rights of consumers. So we need to understand that as a consumer, we do have a right, and that right can be explored. Not only that right can be invoked, not only under the Consumer Forum Act alone, it can be also effectively invoked under the Electricity Act. Thank you very much.